There we go. Okay, welcome to everyone that's viewing in this evening to our evening session of the ARP ESSER implementation plan or the spending plan and the ideas that the community and families may have for us. I'm Carol Jellicoe. I'm the chair of the Board of Trustees. I'm going to introduce some people here with me today, and then I think we have a brief video to kind of introduce the subject. So on my far left would be Linda Carter, who is our grant writer, and Superintendent McGovern. CFO Scott Duncan, our Chief Financial Officer. Our Human Resource Director, Nicole Bolton. To my immediate right is Jody Garner, who is Director of Curriculum. Casey Arnoldi is the Director of Special Education, and Stephanie Tolman as the Director of Technology. So again, welcome. We want to give you a brief overview of the funding. This is over a $14 million grant that is becoming available to us through the ARP, the American Rescue Plan funds. So we obviously want to come up with some ideas that will impact our students and our staff the most. So that's what we're searching for. And as the evening goes on, we'll elaborate a little bit more on that. And then we hope some of you have some thoughts. So I'll turn it over to Superintendent McGovern at this time.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Jellicoe. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight, whether you're live with us and you've got questions or you view this a little bit later. We're going to go ahead. We've got some information we want to share with you to kind of set the stage, put the platform out about, how this all came about, and then we'll kind of take it from there. So, Zach, why don't we go ahead and show that video, please? Good morning, Sweetwater One community. I'm Kelly McGovern. I'm the superintendent of schools, and we're doing a video this morning to share the process with you on some grant funds that are available to the district. The grant is called the American Rescue Plan, ARP, or ESSER grant, and the allocation for Sweetwater One is approximately $14.2 million. And we'd like to ask for your feedback or proposals on the best way to use the funds to really meet the needs of our students and for our staff as we work through the pandemic. There's essentially two plans that are required for the ARP grant. And the first one is called a Safe Return and Continuity Plan. And we'll share some specifics about that one here shortly, but basically it's what we're doing to make sure we have in-person instruction every day and as much as possible. The second plan is called the ARP implementation or the spending plan. And that's where your feedback and your input are going to be so valuable on the best use of these resources. So we're going to shift it over to Nicole, and we're going to share with you a little bit of information. And then Stephanie will talk to you about how do you submit that feedback. So thanks for being involved, and we look forward to hearing your great ideas.
Hello, I'm Nicole Bolton, and I'm the Human Resource Director for Sweetwater School District Number 1. Previously, Superintendent McGovern had mentioned our Safe Return Plan in order to receive these funds. I just wanted to take a moment to go over our Safe Return Plan. All the Safe Return Plan encompasses are our current practices and expectations that the district is taking in order to keep our schools open. At this time, we have no intent of changing any of those practices, but they were a requirement in order for us to apply for the funds.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Tolman. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Sweetwater County School District Number 1, and I wanted to take a few moments to walk you through the form that you'll use to submit feedback or a proposal in order to help us plan the spending of the ARP funds. If you could please bring up the form. So as you see here, this link will be posted to our website, and it will bring you to the form to submit your information. As you go through, we're going to ask for your first and last name. We're going to ask who you represent, and in my case, I would be an employee, but you'll notice that we're looking for feedback from parents, students, community members, or even business partners. The next question, you'll indicate if you're submitting a proposal or a feedback. For a feedback, that's just going to give you an opportunity to type out kind of your thoughts on the funds or your thoughts on how the district should use these funds moving forward. In this case, we're going to go with a proposal. Here you'll be able to upload a proposal with your ideas on how we could use the funds. Staff could submit ideas that they have for maybe different resources or programs or training that we could use to help with our students. As you go down, you'll notice that there are the allowable expenses for the funds. So you'll go through and read these, and what we need you to do is make sure that you check what your proposal meets, and you can do multiple options on this. So these are some of the requirements that we need to submit in order to be able to apply for the funds. The proposals have to meet one or more of these requirements, and keep in mind that 20% of the funds actually have to be used to address learning loss for students due to COVID. So read through those options, select what applies to your funds. For staff members, you'll notice at the end that it's going to ask if you have notified your immediate supervisor of your proposal, because we want to make sure that they're in the loop in order to be able to help best support you and your students. We strongly encourage you to go and provide information. Remember, the deadline ends November 30th at 4 p.m. So get your ideas to us so we can start the next phase of applying for these funds and meeting the needs of our students. Thank you.
And as we finish up this video for you, the timeline to submit either feedback or a proposal it starts today, November 9th, and it goes through November 30th. The window closes November 30th at 4 o'clock. So all ideas are welcome, and we look forward to your input from our district employees, our students, our staff, and also for our community. Thank you so much.
If I may, before we continue, I'd like to mention that we have two trustees online with us, Mr. Max Mickelson and Mrs. Andrea Summers. So they're with us as well virtually. Superintendent McGovern.
Sure. Thank you, Carol. We appreciate Zach showing that video on there. It's a really good overview about, how we work this process and where we go from there. Real quick, if the timeline is handy at all, Zach, just a couple of things that would be good for our community to know. Once that deadline closes at the end of November, we'll be putting together all of the ideas, prioritizing those, and then moving that forward for our Board of Education and presenting that at the December 13th board meeting. And I believe it's on the third page for us. But just to show you the work that's went into this process to apply for those ARP funds, on on that last page, we're here for the public forum. So all of the pages before are the steps that the district has taken to get ready and make sure that we really have stakeholder feedback from everyone that is wanting to have a voice into how these funds are going to go. So in the pink, that's today. We had our forum this morning at 7:15, and then of course for tonight. But we'll move that forward after this, and then once that window closes, it'll get really busy for us. As like I said, we synthesize and put the ideas together, take those that not only have short-term goals but long-term goals that can help the district in the short term, and then also as we move out of the pandemic. That'll be really important for us. And then with the board having their final approval in December 13th. So I think one thing that's really important for everyone to remember is, where have we come from in this whole process? A lot of the school districts have received federal CARES money up until this point, not to the extent of the $14.2 million through the ARP funds. But if we go to our district homepage, just a couple of documents on there that I think would be good for the community to really take a look at and see. But in the upper right-hand corner, thank you, Zach, it talks about the Safe to Return plan. That's the first document on there. So at any point, people can go in and take a look at that. We also have that in Spanish for us. So if any of our families need that, it's available to them. And then when we head back to the homepage, we've got the ARP proposal survey, and that's what Stephanie was sharing with us during the video. So at any point, people can go in, whether they're online with their computer, on their phone, their iPad, it's ready and available for them. And then underneath that is the ESSER funds, the spreadsheet that was actually shared with the public at the November board meeting. And on that one, I think let's take a couple of minutes. Let's walk through that. Scott, could you share that information with us just a little bit?
Yes, of course. Good evening, everyone. So this is a schedule of the COVID grants that we've received so far. And so you'll notice across the top, it relates to a fiscal year. So each of these grants, we've kind of scheduled out to which fiscal year they apply. So if you want to go to the second page for me, please, Zach. Toward the very bottom, there's one that says ESSER 3 ARP, and that's the one that we're talking about now. So the total award, if you go over to the right side, is a little over 14.2 million, and it'll cover fiscal years 22, 23, and 24. And so those funds have to be obligated by the end of September, and they need to be run out by the end of December of 2024. And as the spending plan is still being hammered out, what we've done is on the left side of that grant, we've listed the allowable costs, and these correspond to the form that Stephanie went over as well, that ARP proposal and feedback form. And so the plan is when these elements get identified and costed out, that they'll be listed on this schedule, and then that will be our spending plan.
So I think, Scott, on that document, if we take a look at it, one of the questions that we've been asked a lot is, so overall, what is the big purpose of those ARP funds? And if we go back into that document, like Stephanie and Scott were saying, if you look at number 2, it kind of sums this up pretty well, because it really says that these funds are to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. And so I think sometimes for us, in the video, Nicole had mentioned that the Safe Return Plan, we've had that in place for quite a while, but it's really important to kind of emphasize all of that work that has went into that, and remembering that there are school districts across the United States that haven't been back for in-person learning, and that we've been very fortunate to be able to do that, and what it's really taken to make that effort possible. So I think back to when we first started with being online with all of our schools, and then having return of instruction last year, and having all of the guidance and cautions in place so that we could keep everything open for everyone. So when we look at that, we think, we've really come so far, and we have. And that effort really comes from our parents, our community, really supporting the school, as we've had to have so many different changes for the last several years. This is our 3rd school year with having to do that, and that's a lot. But also with our staff, our bus drivers. I know there's days where we're making sure we have enough drivers to get kids to school on their routes. I think back to when we had Technology Tuesday, and we were sharing technology all at the different schools, and getting the iPads and the laptops all rolled out, to what our teachers are going through, and really taking care of the kids the way our staff has. And the thing for our teachers and all of our staff, nutrition services, our secretaries, our CAB staff, all of those that we've mentioned, including our nurses, we couldn't do any of it without them as well. But the effort that they give to kids every day in a really tough situation, and they go home, they take care of their own families, and then they come back the next day and we do it again. And so the effort to make that possible has been no easy task. And we've done it for a long time. And so we always need to be thankful for the efforts that all of our staff and community have really done to make that happen. But a couple of things that we have used, some of the previous money that's come forward. One that's really important that I think our community would like information about is the virtual school. And so with that, Jody, do you mind if we kind of kick it down to you and you share some information about that?
Sure. Good evening. We were excited when the second round of ESSER funds came and we were able to create the Sweetwater One virtual school for the families and students of Sweetwater School District Number 1. Our students, we are able to offer K through 12 virtual school learning for any student in our district, and it's been very exciting. K through 6, we have a staff of teachers that teach during the day. Throughout the day, they are stationed at North Park, and they teach the students during the day live. And then we have our 7th through 12th grade students have the opportunity to also attend our virtual school asynchronously. And so that team of teachers are current teachers for the district who teach above and beyond their day. They are paid a stipend to teach asynchronously. And so currently we have just over 100 students enrolled in our virtual school, and it has been just a great start to our new program. The staff is excited, and they are just really working with our students and families, trying to make sure that we have success for all. Speaking of that, if you are a parent of a virtual student, tomorrow night we have open house for our K through 6 students and families from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock here in the cab. And then on Thursday night, we have open house for our secondary 7 through 12. Our teachers will be here from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. So if you'd like to meet the teachers or just come in, and your student can come to the small group of attendees so that you can communicate in person with the teacher if you would like to. So we would love to have you here. And it's been a great start. So we were excited to be able to fund that virtual school through our second round of ESSER funds.
Jody, one of the questions besides the virtual school that we've been asked is about interventions and response to intervention. And how do we get those kind of systems put in place and ARP funds? Could you talk about that just a little bit?
Sure. So we have this past year, we were able to partner with Solution Tree and really kick off a district-wide focus on interventions and response to intervention, meaning what is a school doing to make sure that all students can learn and are given the opportunity to learn. It's also called a MTSS, or multi-tiered system of support. So this past year, we did a little book study with each school had a coach from Solution Tree to kind of get the thoughts started and the work moving in the direction of building in systems of support within their school. This year, we kicked off the year with 2 keynote speakers. One, Tim Brown, who came and really gave a great overview on strong intervention models. And then a few weeks later, we had Troy Gobble, who is the principal at Adlai Stevens High School, which is one of the founding buildings of strong RTI practices. And he came and gave lots of great ideas for K-12 and building a strong intervention model. At the same time, we used ESSER funds to add interventionist positions to each of our schools, and 2 at the junior high and 4 at the high school. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to fill all of those positions, but we're always looking and hoping that we are able to fill those. Those interventionists are used to focus on whatever area that the principal decides needs to be focused on, and work with the students who are struggling in certain areas within their building. And so we're hoping that in this next round of ARP money, we could add more interventionists. We've heard from many schools that they would like to see more than one, obviously. And so we're hoping that could be something that we add. We also, with our ESSER 2 money, we were able to fund Friday school. Teachers are able to add Fridays. A few teachers from each school can teach on Friday school and provide support on those days. Those are the no school Fridays. Gray Fridays, is that what they call? And so on a no school Friday, each school has come up with an intervention model for students who are struggling. And so we're hoping that with those interventions in place, both during the day through RTI practices and then our additional interventionists that we're able to add, that we will make some progress. But as we know, that 20% of the ARP money must be used to focus on learning loss. And so we're looking for ideas. If your student is struggling and you have an idea, feedback of what your child would need that maybe we haven't thought about, make sure that you fill out that feedback form and give us your ideas. We are open to suggestions as we look to see. We want to help all students who are struggling, and so that we would just welcome your ideas.
I want to take just a couple minutes to let everyone know who's watching on YouTube and Facebook Live that if you want to put questions or ideas, anything in the comments, we're all monitoring those so that we can answer questions in real time. I also want to speak a little bit about some of the ways that we've used the ESSER funds due to COVID. As Kelly mentioned on Technology Tuesday, we had already gone one-to-one with all of our students. That year was the first year that our 7th through 12th grade students actually took devices home with them each day. So we were sitting in pretty good shape when we had to unfortunately close down. For the previous 2 years, all of our kindergarten through 6th grade students had devices assigned to them. So we just had to make sure that we got those handed out. But as far as the funds that we've used, the ESSER funds that we've used in technology, we have been able to offer families internet assistance. So if families apply for and qualify for free or reduced lunches, they can go onto our website and it'll walk you through the process of applying for internet assistance. We've partnered and worked with Verizon to get jetpacks that we're able to set up for the student devices to connect to when they're at home if they don't have access to internet. I know this has been a huge benefit to some of our families who maybe have had to be quarantined or stuck at home or doing some online learning for various reasons. So we're glad that we've been able to assist them. We've also used the funds to purchase cases for the laptops and the iPads to kind of protect the investment. We qualified for some additional E-rate funds to help fund the monthly fee for using the jetpacks. We purchased swivel cameras. That was a really big thing that we did in the summer of 2020. We purchased swivel cameras that we have in every single classroom. Every teacher has their own. So during the 2021 school year, teachers were able to have live lessons, kind of similar to what we're doing here for students who were choosing to do school from home or maybe had to do school from home for a temporary amount of time. The beautiful thing about those this year is that we don't have to do that live in-person and online instruction. Teachers can use the swivel to record certain pieces of their lesson and then share that link out with students who may have missed school for the day. I know that we have kids that benefit from it, even if they are in school, because sometimes it's nice to be able to go back and kind of watch again what the teacher went over as you're trying to complete assignments in the evenings. So yes, technology has been huge to help us through this, and And like I said, please, anybody ask questions on YouTube or Facebook. We're watching all of it and we're happy to interact with you.
Thank you, Steph and Jody. We've really tried to put some tools and things in the hands of our staff and for our kids so that they're ready to go. And regardless of how everything goes, that we can still make instruction happen for everybody. So we appreciate all the hard work that you guys have done. Nicole, one of the questions we get asked a lot too is about personnel and staffing. Could you share a little bit of comments on that, about how that might work with some of the ARP funds and things that we really need to look out for?
So one of the things we've done with the grant funds to start with, as Ms. Gardner had mentioned, was adding interventionist positions. Unfortunately, when the state opened up those funds and gave them to us, they were later in the year. So although the positions were open, we weren't able to fill quite a few of them. We're hoping to hit some colleges for some semester grads, but those were advertised as certified positions. Only a 2-year position, just because that's one-time money that we're not guaranteed that's going to stay. So some of the feedback we've received is add more paraprofessionals, add more teachers, and it's not that those are not good ideas. I think that one thing that we have to be very cautious of, though, again, is that this is one-time money. And the danger with hiring so many positions is that when the money runs out, if we don't have other positions to put them in, then we're letting people go. And that is always hard. We get in a process and habits of different duties or things that people are covering. And then if the money goes out, then we're back to ground zero of having to let people go again and trying to figure out how to cover all of these duties and different things. So one thing when we're looking at the ARP, we have to be very cautious with the personnel side of it, just that we're able to fill it. We know across the nation there's a teacher shortage. We'll be recruiting heavy again, but from the classified side as well, it's hard to fill positions now, but when they're presented as temporary positions, they're even harder to fill, especially when they're not full-time. So, looking at the funds and how we can utilize them best to really make a difference and bring things in, projects, STEM, interventions, and that staffing may be a part of that. It's just something we need to be very cautious and careful of.
Thank you, Nicole. One of the things we really tried to do in this process and this forum tonight and this morning goes along with that is the district has had 2 different task force groups that were composed of business partners and teachers, administrators. We had students on there. We had board members as well, administrators. Anyone that really had an interest in serving, as whether it was part of the Smart Start expanded task force or the Parent Involvement for Student Achievement task force. But we put 2 of them together, and between the 2, we've had about 80 people that were part of that process. One of them was to develop that safe return plan that we've talked about a little bit, and the other was how do we put this spending plan into action? Because we know that if you want to know what students think, you've got to ask kids. And if you need what resources need to occur in buildings, you need to ask building principals. And if it's in their classroom, you need to ask teachers. So we've really tried to open up the doors on that and give people a voice and an avenue to have their input be heard. And then, of course, this forum being an example of those.
We do have a question, Kelly, on the Facebook page. Jen asked, is there a time frame for this money to be spent?
Perfect.
Yes, so back to the schedule. Each one of those grants has a certain life to it, and they're scheduled out by fiscal year. For this one, the funds have to be obligated by the end of September 2024, and they need to be run out by the end of December 2024. So we've got a couple of years in which to spend it, beginning with this year, this fiscal year.
And this grant process is actually the second part is due to the WDE in January. I want to say the 18th of January. So we're planning to bring that, like I said, to the board in December. So we want to get a little bit ahead of the game. That way, if there's things that we need to do, there's some time to act on that, or any modifications, we also have a little bit of time to do that. Casey, one group of students that there's a lot of questions that come from often is our special services kids. Do you want to speak about that just a little bit, about these funds and the steps we've taken to support all of our kids, and ideas for moving that forward?
Sure. We saw that under COVID, it was not easy for a lot of our students and as well as our staff. So under COVID, we saw that it was difficult to provide the services some of our identified students under IDA needed. So with that, we're still owing compensatory services for that time to make up those services. We're also providing extended school year services based off the regression we saw during that time period. So we're providing funds for those pieces. And just like Jody talking about the virtual school, we also hired special ed teachers that are getting a stipend outside the school day to provide services to those students that need that. We do know some services virtually do not work, such as, APE, PT, things like that. So we have been working with students and the IEP teams to look at ways we could bring them in to school to provide those services outside that virtual day. We do notice, though, it may not have worked for everybody virtual during that time, but we did find that some students it was very beneficial. Some of our students that have anxiety and some other underlying factors, this works really well for them. So some of our students that are doing virtual, it's been a great asset to them for their educational piece. So just being able to provide the multiple opportunities for education has been very good for some of our kiddos. We also noticed, with what's been going on, the mental health of our students and staff has been a huge issue that we're seeing. And so looking at some of these funds on how we can provide some supports to our students and staff, looking at ways, within the school day that we can support these people as well as outside. So looking at some of those mental health pieces, counseling, social work, even nursing, seeing some of those things that have come up. What are some things that as a district we can do with those funds to support everybody in the educational setting? Does it require different accommodations for staff? We were looking at, maybe some sensory rooms, some meditation strategy, some different ways we can support staff and students throughout the day. So those are some things we're looking at funding wise as well. They not only work for special ed, but also for a majority of us. So how can we bring that on site for everybody involved?
Thank you, Casey. One of the criteria, I believe it's under number 13 on those, is it talks about school facility repairs and improvements. And some of the steps that we've taken previously with some of our CARES, our ESSER dollars, really addresses the air quality in our schools. They're beginning steps to move that forward, but that's one of the best practices that we've learned throughout COVID that we've implemented in all of our district facilities, schools, and departments, is making sure we have those ionizers and extra staff to help clean our buildings, and doing our best to make sure that our facilities are feasible and that really they're an asset for us, and that we preserve those assets as much as we can. That doesn't mean we might need some more additional things on our facilities, but that's another step that the district has taken, and it's really helped us keep our doors open for the last couple of years so far. But I wonder, Linda,
We have another question, Kelly. I hate to
Okay.
interrupt. Darcy asks if we have an elective idea intervention that would address learning. Sorry, let me fix my window. Learning loss in a unique way. How would that work with the existing staff?
Perfect. Sorry about that. I didn't even see Darcy's question, so I appreciate you doing that. Jody, on this question, I'll go ahead and start, and if you want to jump in, I know that kind of goes over for your wheelhouse, but and first of all, first and foremost, Darcy, thank you for putting your question up there. And we welcome any proposal or feedback that you or your department or your PLC might have. I think that that's perfect. I think one of the things we want to keep in mind is about the staffing. So is additional staff going to be needed? What are the training aspects for the intervention? How do we take a look at it to see if it's effective or not? So how are the kids doing? Are kids growing from it? I know that the word out there is learning loss, but really, if you take learning loss and put it aside for a minute, we want our kids to grow. And we want them to learn, be back in school, and grow academically as well as emotionally. And then also, how do we sustain that over time? Because if it's a really effective intervention, we want to be able to keep that and keep that in place. If it's good for our staff, when they implement it, they're seeing the changes in their student growth the way they'd like it to. So those are just a couple of things that I would think of off the cuff. But Jody, please, some additional thoughts.
Sure. Darcy, please, you and your peers submit ideas because we are just looking for creative ways that we have not thought about. And if it's involving current staff, existing staff, great. That's even better. As we said, there's lots of ideas that we have been hearing that require us to hire more staff, hire more teachers. And that's a worry for us because we weren't able to fill all of our positions this year. And so any ideas that you have, especially with existing staff, let's hear them and see what we can do. So please submit them.
All it takes is one idea to start a conversation.
Yeah.
While we're talking about ideas, I'd like to encourage people, whether it's families, whether it's students, whether it's staff, to think about it maybe from a selfish point of view. What do you see in your student or in your students in school? What do they need? What do you as a staff member need? Because I cannot believe that if those are some things that we're seeing that you need, that students need, you're not the only one. And that can give us some ideas about where to go. The other thing is, please don't let the idea of a proposal scare you away. What we're looking for is some ideas. You could actually put that in the feedback portion if you would prefer, but we're not expecting a detailed proposal. On day one, you do this, on day two, you do this, or week one, whatever. That's not the expectation. But if you have some ideas, the whole thought is, as we look at these ideas, we can build on those. We don't want to look at this $14+ million as a windfall, but we want rather to look at it as an investment so that we can impact our students and our staff in the most productive way.
Thanks, Carol. Steph, how are we doing with the questions
I think we've got everything answered. I just want to elaborate on what Carol said. We thought and went back and forth actually for the proposals about maybe using some kind of a template just to give people ideas. But we really want people to just be freely out of the box thinking of what we can do to support our kids and build those relationships and make school a great place for them to be. So, yes.
Thank you. To my left, one of the things we've done as a district is to really strategically try to utilize all of the grant funds that we've received and that we're applying for in the future to the best way that we can. And so with that, Linda, can you share some of the grants that we've applied for that kind of go along that would be good for our community to know?
Yes, good evening. As the Director of Grants and Federal Programs, I am privileged enough to be able to write a variety of grants. What I have also been doing and what has also been coming out from the state with federal funds related to the ESSER COVID-19 is they are having additional competitive grant funds that deal with specific areas. A couple of those grants that we've applied for, some of them we've received notice on, One is virtual education and digital learning. We applied for that grant, and we received notification last week that we actually received those funds. And what that grant does is it blends in with the things that we are doing with the ESSER 2 funds to build out the virtual school, supporting the virtual education teachers. Another grant that we applied for and we haven't heard about yet is what is called the ESSER Reserve Cell Grant, the Social Emotional Learning Grant. And within that grant, we focused on how can we support students, staff, and parents and community in relationship to social emotional learning, mental health, and well-being. Some of the things that we included in that grant were ideas for staff to receive some additional a bit time, and or not necessarily time to do it, but to provide classes that will help with that, as well as maybe some optional technology tools for calming, meditation, things like that. The other part of that grant, which was built in to support the community and bringing community together with us to help work with that, is the ability to do what we called is a virtual resource room or a virtual classroom for that mental health and well-being area, where we combine ideas from the community and provide resources to the community as well with that. Another grant that we are currently working on, it is not part of the ESSER funds or CARE funds. It's an additional grant that the state wrote for from the feds. It's called SAMHSA. And it is going to be used, those funds are going to be used to help support students who have some mental health and well-being issues within the school day by providing them a place and a location to meet, possibly with a counselor. And we are partnering with a counseling service, WBI, to help provide those supports. So we are using a variety of grant funds to help support some of those needs that we have been hearing are essential within the community and from the teachers, staff. Another component that I would love to talk about is we are piloting what we are calling a parenting partners workshop. We have brought in a group to help us with some of the training aspects, and we're using teachers, counselors, to help with that parenting partners program. It's almost like a workshop. It is a workshop, not almost like. It is a workshop for parents where they learn some skills in dealing with some of the issues that the students are having at this point in time. It could be motivation, it could be dealing with some emotional outbreaks, but this is almost a 6-week program. The schools will be contacting parents to provide this resource. We also are doing a very specific parenting partners group with our non-English speaking community, and we are seeing great results and great, a lot of people wanting to attend this particular piece.
Linda, if you don't mind if I interrupt really quick, we do have a couple more questions. Jen on Facebook said, I know before school started, the bus schedule was a major issue. Could some of these funds be used to extend that coverage again? I might go ahead and ask all three really quick, just so we get them out. Darcy says, I know this is a policy issue, but what about therapy dogs? I'm with you, Darcy. And then Amy says, I would love to see something happen with the community career integration, especially with our middle school students. They can then experience how learning impacts their future.
Sure. I'll I'll go ahead and start, and then anybody please chime on in. As far as the busing situation, we're really keeping an eye out there for any of the ESSER reserve funds to see if it can expand in any of the areas with transportation, facilities, nutrition services. So for those, not a definitive answer for you. I wish we could give you that. But we are keeping an eye out on those. And one thing we've got to make sure too, that not only does it come in short term, but we also want to be able to keep that going long term for that. But we are keeping an eye on the busing part. The animal question about therapy dogs. Actually, Darcy, on this one, I was talking with some of our counselors, and I think they might be submitting a proposal for this. We have a policy about service animals coming in, but I think this is a different type of situation as far as a therapy dog going in there. So I think there is a proposal that might be coming forward with that. We've actually been asked that a couple of times. The other question, Amy, that you're asking, thank you to everybody for submitting these, about the community career integration. What's unique about our Perkins grant, and Linda was talking about the different grants that we're trying, is our career and technical education. Rock Springs High School is getting ready to implement another academy for next year and get that ready to go. And part of that is with what's called one of our Perkins grants. And the requirements for Perkins actually goes down to 5th grade. Linda, if you wanted to please add to that. But I think some of those opportunities for those kids beginning at those younger levels are going to be really important. Engaged kids like coming to school. They participate, they get good grades. We want them to walk across the stage and get a diploma and be successful for whatever they choose to do. And I think that starts early. But Linda.
It does. And our career technical educators, our CTE folks, have been working on a plan to help with bringing some of that career exploration down to that 5th and 6th grade level. And I know that the academies is also looking at that. So it is in kind of the framework and moving forward, because it is a requirement for us to receive the Perkins funds. And so hopefully you'll start seeing some things coming out from the work that the CTE teachers are doing related to that.
I think one of the things that's really important too is on those proposals or the feedback, that we take a look at all of those, and the ideas are good. And it sounds like, an awful lot of money, and it is. But we're going to be tasked with making the best use of those funds that support everybody involved with them. So thank you for those ideas in there as well. Any other comments from our group here? Chair Jellicoe or our trustees at home?
Sorry, we have another question.
Real quick, I'll answer I had to look up the policy, Darcy. There's so many policies. I don't know that it's a policy issue. Our only policy right now are for service animals, and assistance or emotional support animals actually fall under a state statute. So if that's something that's being requested by the counselors, that'll have to go through a different process, but it doesn't look like it states that it doesn't fall under policy at this time.
I'm going to bring up, Lori asked a question. Would it be possible to have a designated time during our PD time on Fridays for this to be addressed with all the teachers and staff? I think all of our PLCs working together could be helpful.
One of the things, Lori, thank you for your question. Our building principals will be getting with each one of their schools. If they haven't already, it'll be coming to you. But to actually take a little bit of time for each of our staffs to get together and talk about the things that we're going over here for the ARP. So that might be an ideal time for your staff, so that you could have everyone there to say, hey, what about this? What about this? Before you go ahead and you submit a proposal or provide some of that feedback. But that should be coming with all of our building principals, and we thank them for doing that to help us get that word out in just one more way. There's some feedback on there from Darcy.
Oh, yeah. Nicole gave some feedback. Thanks, Nicole. We actually talked about this in the PLC and knew we couldn't have our dogs in the building, but weren't sure about the others. So thank you, Nicole.
Don't bring them on board quite yet. Chair Jellicoe, and I know we've got Trustee Summers and we've got Mr. Mickelson.
I was just going to ask if Mr. Mickelson or Mrs. Summers, if you have any comments that you would like to make? Are you muted, Andrea?
I am. I can't think of any comments I have at this point, but thank you, Chair Jellicoe.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mickelson?
I just appreciate everybody going through these forums and covering all the good stuff that we're trying to do. So thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to remind people, and Superintendent McGovern briefly mentioned this earlier, you know, if you watch the news, however you get your news, you're realizing that there are still schools in this country that have yet to be in person. And some of them are just going back to in person now. And so realistically, a lot of these funds were designed to help that process along. I think we have much to be proud of in the fact that we have not missed school. We have been in session in person for the past 2 years. That we know how valuable in-person instruction is. That's the best way to go for most of our kids. Some do succeed with the virtual, but most kids need that in-person. They need the relationships with their teachers. They need the relationships with their classmates. And so relationships are the foundation of a lot of good things that go on in our schools. And so I just want to remind people that, you know, we want to work with the community, that we have a lot, I believe, to be proud of in that we have been able to maintain that in-person instruction. And so again, we're looking for ideas to help us use this money to impact our students and our staff in a very positive manner. So we would appreciate any ideas that you might have. You know how things go. If somebody starts with an idea, sometimes somebody else can build on it. Those are the kinds of things that we are looking for. And I think some of those ideas of meeting with PLCs and meeting with your building staff may generate some of those ideas too. So, and again, please don't let the idea of a proposal scare you. We're looking for ideas, and we can work on how to implement that. But we're just looking for some new ideas to see what will impact our students and our staff in a most productive way, in a very positive way.
Chair Jellicoe, in our last couple of minutes, if you don't mind, I just want to wish everybody a great American Education Week this week, and the benefit of all of our schools and our staff, that it takes all of us together. But American Education Week is always the week before Thanksgiving, and we have so much to be thankful for here in Sweetwater One and the people that make this great. So congratulations on this week, and we hope our staff feel appreciated, because they most definitely are. And we'd also like to say a thank you to Zach. He's been helping us out so much with all the different broadcasting that we've been doing, and we couldn't do that without him. So we'd like to say a thank you to Zach too.
We'd be lost without Zach, let's be honest.
Yeah.
With that, Chair Jellicoe, any closing things if you want to wrap us up?
I would just like to thank everyone that's with us tonight. Again, the form is on the website, so it's not something that you necessarily have to think of right now. The deadline again is by 4 o'clock on November 30th. So if you have some thoughts, please share those with us. I assure you that all those ideas will come forward. We will go through them, and we will try to look at ways to implement them. Again, we are hopeful that we can impact our students and our staff in a very positive manner. We know that mental health and wellness is a critical time. This pandemic has gone on way longer than I think any one of us ever expected, and we're not through it yet. And it's definitely having an impact socially, emotionally, on our students and our staff. I want our staff to know how much we appreciate all the work that you're doing to build those relationships with students. And we know how those positive impacts that you have with them keep them coming to school. So again, as part of American Education Week, thank you so much for everything that you do. On behalf of the board, we do appreciate all the work. Sometimes we're not really good at saying that and expressing that, but thank you very much for all that you do for our students and our community.
Thank you. I think we'll go ahead and we'll call it a night. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.